Hello, Star Citizens, and welcome to Drake Day. I know it's a lot of people's favorite day. Don't miss out on your opportunity to win an MTC that we're giving away this month. And also, we know what we're giving away next month, but we'll wait till next month to tell you. Right now, though, make sure you like or dislike, make sure you leave a comment, and make sure you're subscribed so that you qualify to win that. Of course, if you are a member, you automatically are entered to win, and you have a greater chance of winning. So, let's get to Drake Day. Let's just jump straight into it. Drake Interplanetary, they said, ever been kicked out of a party you never went to? No, I'm not gonna read the whole thing. But I love Drake's energy of like, I'm not invited, so I don't care. We're still gonna sell some ships though. All right, the Buccaneer. What can I say? It's a scrappy little, oh, it says scrapper right there. I didn't even see that. It's a scrappy little fighting ship. It's a glass cannon. It's got kind of oversized guns so that, it can put up a fight at, the punch above its weight class type of class. Do I like the Buccaneer? Yes, I just think I'm not spending $110 for the Buccaneer when I can get something like a Cutlass that's just so much more useful. If I needed a light fighter, there's cheaper options that are only either have slightly less firepower or the same. Yeah, I just think there's a better option that you can get depending on what you want, but it seems to me that there's legitimately better options going up and down. The Caterpillar. So this is where our CCU War Bond deal is here. The Caterpillar is available today. So you spend 10, you save 30. And I think, what was the upgrade from? So it was the $290 ship, so that's probably like a Vanguard Warden or something like that. Any $290 ship though. And then you spend up to the 300 to get to the Caterpillar. Yep, that was right. All right, the Caterpillar is, to me, one of those ships that is excellent. However, you're gonna have to wait a long time for it to show off its excellence, because I don't think the Caterpillar is getting its modules for a while. So if it's not getting its modules until, let's say, next Invictus, that's a year, right? But I can imagine these modules taking even longer for the Caterpillar to get. I just don't think that CIG is like specifically worried about modules right now. That being said, I could be wrong, and they could be planning something, because if you look at the Retaliator, they kind of scoped out all of those modules and just to make that ship viable. But I don't know if that was part of some larger plan where they were like, okay, we'll do with the Retaliator first, then we'll work on the modularity of something else first, or if it was like, well, the Retaliator fans need something to do. So I'm looking forward to what they do with the Caterpillar, because it's one of those ships that I'm like on the cusp of buying, but then I'm like, I can always find a reason not to buy it because of other ships that I own. So I'm looking forward to seeing what it can do. I don't think anybody who buys it though is going to be upset in the future. You might be upset now because you can't put 32 SCU containers in there, but you're not going to be upset later, I don't think. The Corsair. So it lost its ability to shoot all those guns straight, I believe. I think now one requires a gunner. It's something like that. Yeah, the Corsair is still a great ship. It's $250 and it can carry an Ursa, and it still has great forward firepower. However, people forgot that this was supposed to be an exploration ship. It is supposed to be like a exploration ship with the ability to fight, but it is still an exploration ship first. So if you treat it like an exploration ship that just has a little bit of extra firepower, you won't be upset about the changes that they made, which those changes, I mean, they happened, like a year ago now, so mostly everybody should be used to it. At $250, I still think it's a great ship. I think it could even go up to $300, $350 and still be a good ship. So I like a good value. So for me, Corsair, it's a buy. It depends on what you need, of course, because I could think of some other ships that I like, but I can't think of any that is exactly like the Corsair. So if you have one, I think you'll be happy. The Cutlass Black, Old Faithful. I think the Cutlass Black is one of those ships that everybody loves, but not everybody owns. So it's got like universal appeal. Anytime somebody's like, you know, I really like my Cutlass Black, I think everybody in the room just shakes their head like, yeah, I like your Cutlass Black too. Like nobody is ever upset at the Cutlass Black for existing, right? So I think that speaks volumes, right? Because I think that just tells you how great the ship is. It's such an all-arounder. You know, whatever you want to do in the game, for the most part, you can find a way to do it in a Cutty Black. So that's why I think everybody loves it. The Cutlass Blue. All right, so this one, that straight speed is awesome. That quantum dampener is awesome. If you're bounty hunting, this ship is great because of that quantum dampener, keeping people from jumping away from you and forcing them to fight. However, I would say make sure you're fully crewed in this one, because just because you can make somebody stay and not jump away doesn't mean you're automatically going to win the fight once they stay. And so crew it up, and it's a really great ship. And I think, of course, bounty hunters are going to love it, but also pirates are going to love it. You know, just keeping that sweet loot right where you need it to stay. And I think it's a decent value. I don't think it's as great a value as the Cutlass Black, of course, but it's a pretty good value. I can't wait until we can do upgrades to ships in game, because that would change things a little bit. Because I could imagine telling people to buy the Cutlass Black and then purchase the in-game upgrade to the Cutlass Blue. The Cutlass Red. The Cutlass Red to me is what? It is a ship that used to be incredible, and now I think it's great. So it went down a level, but the level that it went down is like going from a 9 to an 8. It's still a great ship. And the only reason it went down is because I think the medical Terrapin with its tier 2 bed kind of changes things for me a little bit in the bunker space, because I would rather go to a bunker with a tier 2 bed that can heal all of my injuries, and rather than going to 2 beds in a Cutlass Red that can only heal some of my injuries, because I'll still have to return to base more often if I can't get those tier 2 injuries healed. So I think that's why it went down just a notch. However, this is the much more capable ship because it can carry a little bit of cargo, and it has extra beds and stuff like that. So this is more of a ambulance, just like it says. You know, I don't think this is the bunker ship that you should run with. I think you're better off getting yourself either the Terrapin Medic or stepping down and just bringing a C8R with you in another ship, or a Nursa with you in another ship. Because the extra bed is great, but I can't see myself making that choice every time, you know, to take the extra bed when I could get tier 2 injuries fixed. Unless if it's a cost consideration, as always, I would say, you know, buy what you can afford, of course, and all this stuff can be earned in game, so you don't have to buy any of it. It's just, for me, I think the Cutlass Red, to me, needs a little bit of something else if I'm going to use it for bunker running. But I think the Cutlass Red can still be used for that, obviously. I'm not saying you can't use it for it. I just think you're going to find a better option elsewhere. I'd rather have a ship that can carry a Nursa and bring that along, and then maybe pack 2 Nursas in that thing, or whatever. Like I could imagine renting a C2 to bring 2 Nursas or something like that. I don't know. But I'd rather have the vehicle and its abilities rather than having to park this massive ship that's going to get anti-aired very quickly, right? And it's not a tough ship like the Metapin or the medical Terrapin. So it's just not gonna last as long and not be able to land where you need it to land in order for you to utilize those beds that well. So yeah, I'd rather either bring the Nursa, or if I'm gonna bring a ship, if I'm gonna risk getting close with it, I'm gonna bring the Metapin or something larger. But again, still a good ship. Cutlass Steel. We don't talk about the Cutlass Steel. We're going to do that every time, CIG, because why is this ship $235? I get it. You guys gave it a little bit of extra stuff recently. It's still not $235. Look at these Cutlass. 135, 175, 110. You would think the next evolution, right, would be $200. No, Cutlass Steel is $235. I could even be okay with like $215, but $235 is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I don't know a single person that should own this ship, because at $235 there are better options, and somewhere. There's some better options somewhere. I'd rather get a Cutlass Black and an MTC than get a Cutlass Steel. Like there's just I could think of many more combinations or ships that are like $10 or $15 cheaper or $15 more expensive than this ship that I'd rather have at the $250 mark. There's just too many good drop ships and too many good combat ships for me to pick a Cutlass Steel. That being said, if it could get something that made it worth its while, maybe, but I just don't see that happening with it's kind of a weird fit. I think it's for Cutlass lovers. If you're specifically like a Cutlass lover and you're like, I just want more versions of the Cutlass, and then I can understand why you would get something like this. But outside of that, it's too expensive. The Cutter. So this was when the Cutter came out, it kind of took over the minds of all starters, right? It was like, oh, this is the best starter now, because I think the Avenger Titan had sat at that level for so long that, you know, people were just like, well, it's the Titan, you know, it's always the Titan. That when the Cutter came out, people were like, oh, well, the Cutter's good too. And it was like, well, why is the Cutter good? The Cutter is good because you can put a small vehicle in it. Now, this of course was, I think, before the Pulse. So now you can put the Pulse in anything. But this one, I think, can fit the STV. It can fit the STV inside of it, making it a viable, you know, ship to like take a vehicle with you at the cheapest possible price, like $45, and you can take a two-person vehicle with you, which means two people can go out into the verse, you know, for, I think, what is the Stevie? I think the Stevie's price is $40. So for $85, two people can go out in a vehicle, you know, and if you got your game package with the Cutter, I mean, that's two people playing the game, you know, on an $85 dime, and they can do a lot of stuff that the game can offer. So, you know, I mean, maybe it's not a big deal to people who've spent a lot of money on the game, but let's not forget that the people who are starting this game, like, they still need the good deals too. They still need stuff that works for them. And I think the Cutter was a great example of what CIG can do when they focus on doing things for the players and not for the money. Message. All right, the Cutter Rambler. This one started out slow, but gained a lot. I think a lot of people now prefer the Cutter Rambler to the base Cutter because of that extra amount of fuel. So it has a little bit of extra range. This really is your RV, your cheap RV for one person. And yeah, I think that's really what people should use it for. It's a little bit of exploration. I think it can carry 2 SCU of cargo or something like that. A few SCU of cargo, maybe a little bit more than 2. But it can carry a decent amount of cargo for a starter ship, to where you're not just going places for no reason. You can actually bring stuff back with you. And then the Cutter Scout. This is unique because I don't think Drake has any other scout ships that are like dedicated to scouting. So I could be wrong, but let me know in the comments if I am. But I think this is the only one. So it's kind of a, you know, how would Drake do scouting thing, and I think this is pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool now, but I think it'll be much better once we get fully into our military ops type of thing and, you know, spying thing. I can imagine these scout ships really becoming cool ways to spy and bring back information and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that some of these scout ships get the ability to like increase the range of your hacking or something like that, so that, you know, it's much more useful for a person to buy a scout ship. Dragonfly. Do we just have the black? Yep, we just have the black. Well, that's fine. The Dragonfly Black is the only hover bike that can carry 2 people. So there's that. And of course, that person can, shoot while they're on the back of the hover bike, which adds, you know, a weapon in the back, so to speak. Plus, it can carry 2 of those 1/10 or 1/8 SEU cargo boxes. I think it's 1/8 actually. And yeah, and it's got guns on the front. So I think the Dragonfly is one of the better, bikes that you can get. It really depends on what you want, right? If you want a racing bike, you're probably going to get the Nox. If you want a bike that can carry a little bit of cargo with it, you're probably going to get the Dragonfly, including people cargo, right? And then if you want a ship that's going to be great for like fighting while you're, or not a ship, but a hover bike. If you want a hover bike that's great for fighting in, you're probably going to either get the Mirai because it can fit through so many doors, or the X1 because you can swap out that front and put a shotgun on that thing and just wreak havoc. So it really just depends on what you want. The X1, of course, also has the shield, which makes it, kind of the peak for combat on a hover bike. So yeah, but you pick what you want, and the Dragonfly is a major part of that. Pick what you want. I think that if we say those are the big 4 as far as hover bikes. Then the Golem or Golem, I don't know which way you want me to say it. So I'm going to say Golem. The Golem, I just did a review on it. I really like it. It's really small. I can see why it exists. It is definitely one of those ships where it's like you can see that CIG is improving on every idea, and the Golem is just here. Look how we can improve on that. The Golem is $60, and the next closest ship that can mine is 155, I believe. Either 150 or 155. And that is significant. That's almost 3 times the price. And I just don't see why anybody wouldn't get a Golem. If you're slightly interested in mining, I would get a Golem. And then if you're more than slightly interested, I would probably suggest that you get a Mole and not get a $155 ship that, like I said, I'm not mad at it, but the Prospector is the Prospector, and the Golem looks cooler than the Prospector. And if I know that I'm for sure getting into mining, I would rather just buy a Mole. And that would be the smallest I would get if I'm not getting a Golem. So the Golem really it really made the Prospector, clutch its pearls, I think, a little bit. Now, there's going to be some Prospector lovers out there. I respect that you respect the Prospector. I still respect it. It's just, for me, the Prospector needs a little bit of something else now because the Golem exists. And maybe it's a little bit of increased firepower or something, but I think the Golem kind of makes me a little bit more like, I'd rather just take that out if I'm going to go solo. All right, then the Herald. So the Herald is interesting. It's the smallest data transporting ship that we have. To me, this ship is really, really cool. It just needs some TLC. There's no other ship that can do what this ship can do. It goes extremely fast in a straight line because of those massive thrusters on the back. And it's a data running ship. For one person. I think it was one person. I think it might have a bed in there or something. It might have a bunk bed though, but I'm pretty sure it was just one person. It either has a bunk bed or a jump seat, and yeah, you can bring a person with you. It's just a cool ship that just doesn't have its usability in game yet. But I think most people who are into data running, and they know that that's for sure what they want to do, I can say this would be a solid purchase for you. But I think data running is really losing a lot of people. I think a lot of people started out wanting to do data running, but because we haven't heard anything about data running in like 4 or 5 years, it's kind of made you be like, I don't know if I still want to do that. So I can imagine people kind of getting a little weary on data running, but I still think it'll make its comeback, and the Herald would be part of that. The Ironclad. So the Ironclad, and we can do the Ironclad Assault together. I've talked about these in other videos because the Ironclad Assault and the Ironclad are 2 of my favorite ships that CIG has ever built. And I think it's because it checks so many boxes without like being overpriced, and it checks so many boxes without destroying the system, right? So this is the Ironclad. It's meant for you to put a metric ton of cargo on for a significantly cheaper price than most ships that can carry, you know, thousands of cargo units. But the Ironclad is going to require somebody to be there to, you know, defend it. You know, the Ironclad is going to require some people to defend it. And I think if you're not willing to hire people to defend you, and you're going to be out doing these 1,500, 2,000, or I think it's 1,500 SCU of cargo missions, then you might be asking for some trouble, but maybe you'll get away with it. Maybe you're a better pilot. Maybe you know better routes than I do. But I would not suggest going out with an Ironclad if you don't have a few other ships with you. Speaking of which, it can fit some smaller ships in there, but it cannot fit a tank. And this is something that somebody said on my other video. A lot of people didn't know this, but the entrance to the Ironclad is smaller than the entrance to the Ironclad Assault. They made it larger for the Assault because the Assault carries less cargo, but it can carry 4 tonks. Whereas this one cannot carry any tonks unless you drop them through the top, I believe, because they don't fit in through this door. It fits, I think, everything except the tank. So I think that's kind of the idea. If you want to fit a tank on there, go ahead and get yourself an Ironclad Assault. But let's speak about the Ironclad Assault. The Ironclad Assault, of course, outside of being able to fit in that, you know, those tonks, it can also defend itself. If you look here, you can kind of see there's quad size 5s on the bottom, and then I think these are dual size 5s on the top, and then I think this is a dual size 5 down here. These might be dual size 4s at the top. I don't remember. I think it was dual size 4s at the top, dual size 5s at the bottom, and then a dual size 5, or no, quad size 5s, and then a dual size 5 here at the bottom. That sounds right. That sounds right. But the idea is this thing can defend itself. So if you want to take 1,100 SU of cargo with you and defend yourself, you can take the Ironclad Assault. Now, I still wouldn't suggest that. I would still suggest anytime you go out that you take a ship with you for defense, or take multiple ships with you, actually, unless it's a massive defensive ship. You know, if you got a massive gunship, then I can imagine you taking one. But if you got some smaller ships, then I would say you need at least 2, and one of them cannot be a light fighter. So yeah, that's the way I would say it. And even still, you could fit light fighters on this, you can fit tanks on this, and it has a garage on the inside and a small one of those component creator things, it looks like. I don't know if it's a component creator, but it can create small things, small manufacturing little things. I think it's gonna be like the Reclaimer, how the Reclaimer has that little thing that can create the little handheld tools and stuff. I think that's what the Ironclad Assault will be able to do. I don't know if it'll do much more than that. However, the garage is key for me because this is a secondary garage, right? So I have a Crucible, but the Crucible isn't a fighting ship. The Crucible is a repair ship. So it has a garage, of course, on it, and multiple versions of that garage. But the Ironclad Assault is a ship that can fight and has a garage. So when I'm actually going into combat, I wouldn't want to bring my Crucible, but I would want to bring my Ironclad Assault, set that a little further back so that, you know, if the tanks get damaged or something, maybe somebody with an SRV goes out, grabs the tanks off the battlefield, brings them back, you know, and I can repair them in the garage, and then they can go back out and fight. Now, you know, medical beds and stuff like that aside, like if you this could be in the rear detachment that is just supporting everybody with its garage, and of course it can do hot drops because of all this weaponry on the bottom. I mean, 4 size 5s, 4 size 5s, and then 2 size 5s at the bottom. That's 10 size 5s bearing down on you as this thing lands to drop off its payload. So yeah, not to mention, it's also got jump seats lining the entire part where the tanks go in. So, you know, there's a lot of cool things about the Ironclad Assault. It's one of my favorite ships in Star Citizen. So yeah, I could talk about it all day. I'm not going to. All right, the Kraken and the Kraken Privateer. We're going to skip those because we need to do the Mule and the Vulture. We'll do the Mule and the Vulture, and we'll end on the Kraken. The Mule. The Mule to me is great because it can spin on a dime because of how close these wheels are. So it can, like, you know, instead of like having to turn like a car, it can just spin like that. I wish it could crab walk. I think that would make it even better, but that's fine. The Mule is good. It's not great. I think it needs to either move faster or carry more, because it just doesn't carry enough for me. I think it carries, what, 2 SCU in the back and then 1 SCU in the front for a total of 3. And then it has these 1/8 SCU side units here. But I just wish it could carry more. The whole idea is it being a mule. I wish you could put SCU on top of this thing. I just don't get why I can't put SCU on the top. If I could put SCU on the top, isn't that much more mule-like? I don't know. I feel like if I could put 2 SCU on the top of this, I would have 0 complaints. That would solve everything I need about it. But if you can't do that, I also think you could just make it faster, you know, make it, you know, it's already extremely maneuverable. But if you can't make it faster, you know, increase the agility of it, you know, increase its you know, 0 to 60 speed at least. Yeah, that's what I would say about the Mule. And then the Vulture, all right? We're not going to end on the Vulture. We'll go back and talk about the Krakens. The Vulture is one of those ships that I can tell almost every single person to buy. There's no person in Star Citizen that can't find a use for the Vulture. The only people that I could say would not want a Vulture are people who are like fully crewing their Reclaimer every single time they go out. Like, if you have enough people that consistently play with you to where you can consistently crew your Reclaimer when you go out, then I can understand why you would, you know, not necessarily want a Vulture. I suppose people who own a Misfortune might say, hey, I want to be a part of the Vulture conversation, but not really. I think the Vulture is the better ship, and I think if you're choosing between the two, I'm going to tell every person that talks to me that the Vulture is the better ship. So the only people that I would say should get the Misfortune are people who just like the aesthetics of that ship more, or people who prefer Misk over Drake, things like that. But the Vulture is a great salvage ship. It's fun to use. It's well organized. It looks great. It looks fantastic, actually. It has a great number of skins with it. It's just a great ship. All right, now to the Krakens. The Kraken and the Kraken Privateer, $2,000 and $1,650. Ay, ay, ay. We're waiting for these to come out. I'm actually glad that the Kraken is coming out after the Idris, because I think the more they figure out things about ships, the more that they'll include in the ships that are being built in the future. And so with the Kraken not even being done in the next 2 years, which we kind of know at this point, because they have to finish the Ironclad before they finish the Kraken, and the Ironclad's not coming this year, and it's at earliest coming Invictus of next year. So we know they're not going to finish the Ironclad and then finish the Kraken within 6 months of that. So we can expect the 2027 earliest release for something like the Kraken, and that's just earliest, right? It could be even later than that. So it's a ways off. And after finishing the Kraken, or after finishing the Idris, all the lessons that they'll learn from that are going to go towards, you know, these other, you know, ships that are being built, these other capital ships that are being built in the future, which is another reason why I'm not super upset about like the 600i not getting its rework and stuff like that, because the later they do those reworks, the more they'll figure out and the more they'll be able to include, because they'll know more about the final nature of the game, right? We already know kind of what Star Citizen 1.0 is going to look like. Now it's time to figure out what is the absolute best balance for everything going into that. So who should buy the Kraken? I mean, it's $1,650. Nobody should buy it. Let's be honest. Nobody should buy it. That being said, people are going to buy it. I bought one. So I'm one of those people that is not practicing what I preach when it comes to the Kraken. The Kraken Privateer is also a great ship, but it's a mobile marketplace. It's very specific type of gameplay. If you're not interested in a marketplace, then if you're not specifically interested in, you know, basically being a mobile space station, then the Kraken Privateer is not for you. It's going to be based on how much you can sell. You can obviously land on planets here. I think they're landed on a planet here. Yeah, it looks like they're landed on a planet. Landed on a planet, looks like they're in the water. But yeah, it's really cool to me because the Kraken Privateer presents the ability to own a space station that moves, whereas like they're saying now you can have space stations. And even when I saw the space stations, I was like, there's not enough shops. So I'm sure that'll be like a module you can put on your space station, but think about all the work you have to do to get to the point where you can own a space station, and then all the work you have to do to get to the point where you have a marketplace, and then all the work you have to do to fill that marketplace, right? So that's a long ways away. Whereas if you're just willing to spend $2,000, you can just have all that stuff ready to go. And I think this is for people who are truly like their mind is blown by the idea of having a marketplace in game. Because other than this, I would say getting the Banu Merchantman is the much better deal, where you can get a taste of this. And then if you like it, you can always, of course, melt the Merchantman and go and buy yourself a Kraken Privateer. The only thing is, at some point, these prices are going to go up. And considering how much the price of the Idris went up, I'm going to say the Kraken's price is probably going to go up as well. So the base Kraken is, like it says, the Flying Fortress, right? It is the ship that is going to be a lot of people's home base, right? You're going to take out your medium ships and your small ships. You're going to fly from the Kraken and you're going to go out and, you know, do things and then come back to the Kraken to refuel, rearm, repair. Not to mention the Kraken is going to have, you know, all types of other amenities and stuff on it for people to do all types of other things like Dragonfly bays and stuff like that. The Kraken is just a great base, straight up. It's a great base. It's a great light carrier. It's weird to say it's a light carrier though, because what's a heavy carrier? The Idris can't carry more ships than this. The Javelin, I would say the Bingle. I don't know, but this being a light carrier, I just think is hilarious. That being said, great ship. I got one because I think when I was thinking of like my favorite capital ship of like, what do I want out of a capital ship? The Kraken is the only one that kept entering my mind. Now, I do think the Idris is the better ship overall because I think the Idris is better for what's suited to the gameplay of the average Star Citizen. However, the Kraken is what's best for me. And I realized that when I was trying to make the decision of whether to buy an Idris or not, because the Kraken just feels like it's where I want to be. Like I want to be on a ship that has all of these amenities on it. That's basically a space station. You know, this is a space station that's more like militaristic and less about the amenities, whereas this is a space station that's less militaristic, more industrial, and not really about more about the amenities than something like the Kraken. And so I don't really need the shops as much, which is what kept me from this, because I already have a Banu Merchantman. And I was like, I'd rather have the Banu Merchantman plus the Kraken rather than having a Kraken Privateer without like having the base Kraken, because you do lose some of the storage capacity in the Privateer. I think the Kraken has like 3,800 SCU, somewhere around 3,800 SCU of cargo, which means that even if I have an Ironclad, or better yet, even if I have an Ironclad filled to the brim, it would take 2 trips in an Ironclad to fill up a Kraken. So there's the amount of cargo that it can fill, which is an insane amount of cargo. So then it becomes your base, your thing you must protect in the fleet. And I think it's really cool. You know, mine would probably not often leave the base unless I had like full crew, which means people on top of it, people inside of it, and people around it, you know, providing security. So it'd be very rare that it leaves my bubble, which is inside of my base. You know, it would be more of like the place that we all live inside of while I'm building a base, you know, and other people can of course come and land on the pads, and you know, I'll have things stored inside of the Kraken because it'll be like my warehouse where I keep all the goods, and people can come and purchase things directly from me. They don't even have to go inside. I can just stand out on top. I have a lot of ideas for the Kraken, but you can take most of those ideas and do them with the privateer as well, so don't get me wrong. However, the privateer can only have 1,300 SCU of storage, which I say only because the Ironclad can carry more than that. However, of course, the Kraken privateer also has the entire mobile marketplace that you can walk through, and which has, I believe, like 10 shops, so plus like a secret back room where you can do shops. So the Kraken privateer it's great in its own right, but again, you have to really be dedicated to that marketplace, and you have to really not like the Banu Merchantman, because the Banu Merchantman can do that as well. So it's really about what you want. To me, I thought the better combination was the Kraken and the Banu Merchantman, which turns out to be a little bit more expensive. However, I bought the Banu Merchantman when it was cheaper, so it turns out to be exactly the same price for me. I bought it when it was $350, and you can see the price difference here is $350 between the Kraken and the Kraken privateer. So I got my Kraken and I got my Kraken privateer in my own way, so to speak. But again, like I said, I think the Kraken privateer still has its place, but you just have to be into that market gameplay. The Kraken, though, is much more for everyone, is what I would say. For everyone with $1,650. By the way, let me just say this, because anytime I talk about these really expensive ships, I'm not trying to get you to buy these ships. I really think that most people should I think the most anybody should ever spend on this game is $400, even though I've surpassed that 7 years ago by a massive amount. Trust me, I still would say most people should not spend any more than $400 on this. Find a ship that you like that is under $400, buy that ship, and then whatever you have left, you can buy one or two other ships depending on what you chose for your first. And yeah, I think that's it. Have a little fleet that can do a few different things, and that's it. Get yourself something that can fight, something that can make you money, and then something that just looks cool. I think if you do that, I think most people's fleets are going to be fine. So I do a roast my fleet thing, but that's all for fun and games. I really think people should only spend what they have the money to spend, and I really think most people should be trying to earn all this stuff in game. So my first thought is earn it all in game if you can. Buy maybe that one ship that you like and then earn the rest in game. My second thought is if you're gonna spend money, don't spend any more than $400. And my third thought would be stop at 1,000. Once you get to Concierge, there's not much more reason to go up. If you did spend that 1,000 already, the next levels, just relax. You're probably better off bringing more people to the game to make sure that the game is successful than spending more money. Upgrade your computer, upgrade other things, get yourself some sticks, whatever. But yeah, that's my little soapbox moment. And I will see you guys again, I think in 2 days. Yeah, should be 2 days. Thanks for watching, and shout out to the members. Peace.